Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark, episode 39. My guest today is Joshua Copeland. Joshua is known as the unpopular opinion guy because he actually talks about the things nobody else is talking about, which gravitated me towards him because him and I share the same similar philosophy of we have to start talking about these things and we have to start challenging things. He's a best-selling author, which we'll talk about his book and stuff too. But let's kind of take it back to your childhood. What was that like? Were you a curious kid who was tinkering and breaking stuff all the time?
Yeah, I was a military brat, so we moved a lot, bouncing back and forth between, parents and grandparents, which led me to have a lot of time on my own to figure out things that I like or things that I don't like. And, here's this thing. How can I take it apart and make it do the thing I wanted to do instead of just doing the thing it was designed to do?
Yeah.
Taking apart RC cars and putting 2 or 3 motors in them just to make them go faster, and kind of just snowballed from there. I got access to my first computer and it's like, this is amazing. How can I break it and make it do other things?
I think all of us kind of started in that vein where we were like just tinkerers and kind of playing with stuff and breaking things. And then when we realized very quickly that hey, if you kind of dork with this one thing and kind of play with this one thing, you can make it do more stuff and you can have it do more cool stuff. And it then leads to a career that kind of both of us fell into, which is kind of this technology life. Did you find yourself kind of constantly pushing boundaries like your whole kind of adolescence, where you're like, well, it says it can't do this, but I bet you I could make it do it?
Um, I pushed a lot of boundaries, not just with the things that I touched and played with. It was one of those things to where I was one of those people, if you told me I couldn't do something, I was bound and determined to figure out a way to do the thing you said I couldn't do, just to prove that to you that not only can I do it, but you were wrong. And that was a huge thing for me, where it's, oh, you can't do this thing? Bet, watch me do it.
I feel like my whole career is basically like being told no and going, all right, well, you can, as Adam Savage says, I accept your reality, but interject my own. It's like, let me go ahead and there's no reason for me to believe that I took every no as a way to just say, hold my beer type situation and let me prove it to you. So did that lead you? I see you had a very long military career too, doing comms and a bunch of other stuff. Is that what led you down that kind of technical path, or what did you learn from that time in the military?
Um, Being in the technical field was totally by accident. It was not intentional. In school, I was kind of the guy that played with computers and, did things I probably shouldn't have done. Not probably. I definitely should not have done. But I knew I didn't have money for college. And, the military's like, well, if you do 4 years, we'll give you a GI Bill and you can go to do school while you're in and we'll pay tuition assistance. I'm like, sold. And I just picked a random job that shipped on a date that I wanted to leave for basic training. I put no real thought into what the job actually was. And I ended up leaving for basic training with a job in logistics. So putting beans, bullets, and aircraft parts from one place to another and making sure that they're the right thing at the right place at the right time. And I was going to do that for 4 years and, pull chalks, go to school, learn something that I actually wanted to do. And at my first duty station, I kind of got presented with an opportunity. And you know how they tell you in the military, never volunteer for anything. Again, like my course for life. Oh, you told me not to do that? Okay, I'm going to do that.
I'm definitely going to do it. Yeah. That is a guarantee for me to do something. If you put me in a room with a red button and you say, don't push it, I'm not gonna survive.
So they came to me and said, well, we have this thing called a work group manager. And I'm like, what's that? They're like, I'm not really sure, but it has something to do with the computer stuff. And when you got here, you were into computers, you bought a computer and you stripped it down, rebuilt it like 3 times because you were bored. Do you want to do this thing? I'm like, yeah, absolutely will do that thing. And that was my first introduction into being a system administrator in a military network. And then I eventually was able to formally cross train into all things cyber and got to do some really cool stuff. And most of it was doing things I was told you're not allowed to do. When I actually became a formal communications cyber troop, none of the jobs I had were actually what my AFSC was supposed to do. I was always doing something else. It was, hey, there's this, job or function or something that's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's broken. Here, Josh, go fix this thing, build a new version of it. And once you get that up and running, we'll move you to something else that's broken and you can go fix that. Because we know that you're going to get bored. And if you're bored, that's probably bad for all of us.
I think that is a story of my career path too, where getting bored is kind of the death knell to my growth and potential. I always want to be in an environment, and like you, I looked at kind of your career and stuff before we chatted. Like every few years, you're changing roles and changing opportunities, and even your path in the military was very same. You're like, yeah, I'll go do that for a bit. Yeah, I'll go do that. I'll try that for a bit. I feel like there's a lot where people who are trying to get into technology now are never going to have that opportunity because we're just kind of pigeonholing people into the same role and then never really giving them opportunities to grow outside of it. And do you see that too with the businesses that you work with and all that stuff with the consulting that you do?
Yeah, I've seen it particularly over the last 5 to 10 years where as cybersecurity has matured, and I use that term very, very loosely.
I was like, can you throw quotations around that?
We've created all these roles, and we're looking for folks to build very deep depths of knowledge in a particular area. Like, you're going to be a SOC guy. We want you to be a SOC guy. You don't have to know anything else. Just be a SOC guy. Or you're going to be a GRC person, or you're going to be a pen test person, or you're going to be a policy person. And all you're going to do is write policy, or you're going to be an audit person. You're just going to review stuff. And I think we've done that to the detriment of the larger field because every job I've done has been something that is different than the job I had before. But all the jobs I had before made me exponentially better at the job I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I went into a SOC and came in as a tier 3 SOC analyst. And when I interviewed for the job, I told them very clearly, I'm not a SOC analyst. I've never done SOC work ever. I've built the systems. I've built the policies. I've done pretty much everything but SOC.
Right.
Like, I'm probably not the person you want to hire, particularly as a tier 3 that is supposed to be doing all this, leadership and designing and all this other stuff within a SOC. And they're like, no, you don't understand. That's exactly why we want you, is because you have all this other things that you can bring in and you can start building the connective tissues between, okay, yes, we have this SOC alert, but why do you have that SOC alert? Why does that matter?
Yeah.
You understand how the systems are built. So when you're building these alerts, you're not just building based off of this is something that might look bad. You understand the second and third order effects of that. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And it worked out really well for me. I have folks that I hired in after I came to that org, and, we still talk on a routine basis. And to me, that's kind of been my bread and butter, is taking all these things that I've done, all the things I've broken over the last almost 30 years, and taking that and building new things that have essentially been built with the privilege of not having to break because I've already broke it someplace else.
Yeah. Do you fall into the trap? And I fall into this trap a lot where I've already failed doing that once. So a lot of times I'll stop someone else from doing it. I've stopped myself from, I don't stop people from having the opportunity to fail anymore. But for a long time in my leadership career, I was like, I assumed, and I think it was a little bit of hubris that, hey, if I failed while trying to do it X way, they're going to definitely fail. Did you do that also, or did you kind of catch on pretty early that like our greatest teacher in our life was failure, and taking away that opportunity from someone was kind of a jerk move?
I was very, very fortunate that extremely early in my career, like I was a two striper in the Air Force, and I had a boss who definitely subscribed to the fail fast mentality. Like,
Fail fast,
I'm
learn
going to
quick.
give you a task,
Yep.
I'm going to allow you to fail at it and fail in a safe environment where if you fail, it doesn't really do anything.
Right.
And then you'll start learning to ask questions. And when you come to me and ask me a question, I'm going to go, did you read this? Did you go here? Did you look at this resource? And if you didn't do those things, he's going to turn me around and say,
Go do
go
them.
back,
Yeah. Try again.
RTFM,
Yep.
read the insert expletive book here or
Yep.
manual. And then, I kind of started building that mentality where it's like, okay, I've looked at everything I can do. Go to someone who's smarter than me and go, all right, look, here's the problem. Here's where I failed. Here's the stuff I did to try to figure it out.
Yep.
What's next?
Yeah.
And I found once I got into that capability, I was able to learn so much more because the 6 things I learned trying to find the right answer made it to the next time I did something, I had just so much more knowledge than I would have if
Yeah.
my boss just would have said, here's the right answer.
Yeah. And you were that much more capable of being your own self-fulfilling success story, right? There's something about creating an environment where teams can fail, where I think a lot of leaders nowadays really fail at, which is giving people the space to make mistakes that won't cause catastrophic impact to your business. I read a post by somebody recently, and they were like, I would never hire a junior level person because they could, this is what a junior level person did. And they gave this litany of like failures and how they dropped their whole Azure environment. And I'm like, how do you allow that to happen? That's not the person's fault. That's the leader's fault, and the person who's leading that person to ensure that they don't have the access to do those type of things. But I see it all the time where leaders are creating this authoritarian kind of environment, which leads to burnout, which leads to a lot of the things that we've seen, you and I, over the last 20 years in cyber as the normal. Let's just burn this person down. Are are you seeing similar where leaders are just not giving people the space to fail, or do you think we don't have the time for failure anymore because of budget cuts and all the things?
I think if you don't have the time to have controlled failure in your environment, you have failed as a leader.
Yep.
Right out of the gate. You have set up for an environment where everything is going to be either success or failure and no gray area in between.
Right.
Because ultimately, you can do a lot of really cool stuff in cybersecurity. I can put a lot of really great guardrails, and there's no way somebody should get around this. But the reality is, humans are very smart and they're exceptionally lazy. And putting those two things together is absolute menace to security because they will find a way around all of your cool security things if it means that they have to do less work and it's going to be easier for them. I'll show my age and go back to when Microsoft Exchange first came out with the ability to do file filtering. And you're like, yes, I'm going to
finally.
Yes, I'm going to block zip files. And within 24 hours, everyone figured out I'm just going to change it to .txt and tell the person on the other end to change it back to zip. And woo, I've changed nothing. And then I went, okay, we're going to go and we're going to block pretty much every attachment. You're going to have to upload it to like a SharePoint or, up to a share drive or something. And then people start using Gmail to ship files through. I'm like, people are very, very smart and they're going to find a way around your security. So a
100%.
good security practitioner is going to find a way to put the right security in with the right amount of friction, where
Yep.
it's not so much that people go, this sucks, I'm going to find another way to do it, but not so little that you have no security at all. And
Just enough to be slightly annoying, but not enough to piss you off, right? Like that's the goal.
and part of how you do that is through iterative failure. Like, okay, I put too much friction in this. I need to bump that down. Or I'm like, okay, I did this and they're still doing this. Okay, I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
And okay, they're still doing all the things I want them to do in the right way. Okay, I'll turn it up a little bit more. Oh, now they're starting to veer off and do crazy things. Okay, dial it back half a degree and kind of figure out that mess. But ultimately, that's kind of one of those things where you have to provide your team the opportunities to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
Allow them to be creative and go, okay, yes, this is the gold medal, unlimited budget tech stack. You're going to have, full on, everything's going to be Palo Alto for your routing and switching. You're going to have, Splunk as your core SIM with all the bells and whistles. You're going to have your entire Microsoft Azure suite with everything in M365. Yes, it's going to cost you like literally a couple $1 million a year in fees. And that's great if you can afford that.
Yep.
But how many companies can?
Not many.
Fortune 100 companies, you get an SMB. All right, I need you to be creative. I need you to figure out how to secure somebody who's purely in a GCP environment and you're using GWS as your total productivity and identity suite.
Yep.
And still be secure and not be pencil whipping your SOC 2 and your ISO 27001, but actually doing real security and be creative about it. Like, okay, we can't do that. And I would buy a tool to do that because I went to RSA and there's 1,000 shiny tools that do that thing.
Yeah.
But they all cost, $100,000 a year. And my budget is $50,000 a year for one new tool to do something I really, really need. How can I do this thing? And, allow people to fail. And we're in an amazing environment right now with, generative AI and the ability to do things like Claude and, OpenClaw, where you can really have folks build tools. Now, you have to give some left and right guardrails and make sure that they're doing it the right way and do legitimate code reviews and have people who actually know what they're doing do code reviews, because I've seen some of the code that comes out of Claude and it works. I don't.
I always say it's the best way I explain it is if Claude was your neighbor and you're like, hey Claude, why don't you come over for a barbecue? It would charter a hot air balloon and then parachute into your backyard. It gets there, but it's also the most complicated way to get there. And that's the thing where I think, like you said, like having someone competent review that code is critical, because just because it's working doesn't mean it's working efficiently and doesn't mean it can work at scale, doesn't mean, there's so many factors that people aren't taking into account as they, continue to try to blame AI for all the tech layoffs. It's just like,
I'm like, yeah, it works until you get that first cloud bill and it's like 4 times what you budgeted because it's using a massive amount of compute that you don't really need because it's doing the absolute worst case of, algorithm for doing that thing, instead of doing a multi-tier search and it's doing segments.
It's searching the entire database.
It's searching the entire database line by line, each transaction. Like,
and your compute goes from like, barely anything to a massive bill. I think a lot of people don't realize too is right now AI is in its infancy and it's scaling at such a rapid pace that we as a community and as a society cannot keep up with the compute demands. And what I think a lot of businesses don't realize as they heavily invest in AI, thinking it's going to save them a ton of money, is that is a short-term win, because these investors who put billions of dollars into OpenAI and into Claude, they're looking to get a 3x to 5x multiplier over the next few years. And the way they're going to do that, with all the data center projects being canceled, with all of the things, the inability to get capacitors, the inability to get any real infrastructure, because we rely wholly on external markets like China to give us these things, we're going to run into a situation where you're going to have to pay to play. And that premium data model and that premium kind of spot in priority is going to come at a premium cost. And I don't think a lot of people are looking at it like you just said. We're like, yeah, you built this thing, but now your compute cost is, yeah, you fired that developer who you would have been paying 160 grand, but your first AWS bill is their salary for the year.
Well, and that's the thing is, there's a lot of capital expense behind all of this AI stuff that bill is going to come due. I live in Northwest Louisiana. AWS just announced a 12 billion with a B set of data centers specifically for AI. They're building 3 in my parish and the parish next to us. You go down I-20 a little bit over in Monroe. Meta just did a multi-billion-dollar data center. You go a little bit further down 20 over in Mississippi. There's another data center being built over there. Where I grew up in central Pennsylvania, Microsoft bought 3 Mile Island
to build an entire data center for the entire island.
They literally bought a nuclear power plant to run their AI data center.
Yeah, like, it's brilliant.
I'm like, but all of that money's got to come from somewhere, and that $20 a month Chat GPT isn't going to be covering that for very long.
No, and that's where I feel like a lot of these smaller businesses who are going heavily into the AI space are going to be hit with these massive compute bills, or they're going to be hit with basically slowdowns in their data and prioritization, which basically eliminates the goal of what they were originally trying to do. And like you said, there are several data center projects that are being spun up, but from the data that's being kind of given is like, yeah, we want to build this. We have the money to build it, but we don't have the infrastructure, and we don't have the capacitors. We don't have the things that are going to be required for us to get these things online. And only the biggest of big dogs are going to be able to build those data centers. And you know what they're going to be able to do, just like I do, Joshua, is they're going to be able to charge whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And you're not going to.
And the other part of that is they're getting so much pushback on building data centers because the water requirements, the energy infrastructure requirements, there are places that early on did not have, the appropriate covenants in place to protect the citizenry, where, they have to be, a net zero on water. They have to pay for all the infrastructure to allow for that. Yep. Those things were not necessarily covered in early data centers that now they're, hopefully if you have a data center being built where you are, your legislative bodies and, legal entities are forcing that, where, the Meta, the OpenAI, the whoever has to pay for the infrastructure upgrades to the electrical grid, because if they don't, we will. And that's going to be a higher electric bill, because the infrastructure has to be improved for the amount of draw that's coming in. The water systems, people don't understand how much water it takes to cool a data center. And that water is not pristine coming back out the other end.
No, and it's an unbelievable amount of cost just for cooling, right? Like, one of the questions that they always ask, like on the Google interviews, is like, "Hey, build me a data center in Alaska." It's like, what can you save money on? What values do you have? And a lot of people don't even think about how much that's going to cost. And like you said, there's a lot of these municipalities who are agreeing to these data centers because they're being sold on a lie. Yep, it's going to increase jobs. You'll get 5,000-10,000 jobs at that data center. But you're also going to lose a lot of resources. And if they're not working those deals, or you don't have people who understand the technology to say like, hey, hang on, it's going to come back to we as the consumer are going to foot that bill. And I don't think there's a way for us in the future to not foot the bill, because as the rise in data costs and rise in compute happens within the next, I would estimate, probably 5 months. I would say before year end, we'll start to see data prioritization models, and we'll see AWS roll out like platinum tiers of their AWS and compute. What if you don't factor in those things into your cost in that growth model? You're going to run into a situation where you can no longer run your AI on the budget that you originally had kind of planned for, and your 2-year window is just out the window, and you can't find those people anymore because they had given up on technology after a year being out of work and nobody hiring them. It's like we're creating this monolith of a beast that I don't think we're going to be able to control. And I feel like there's so many people. You've got people like us who are like, hey, listen. And then you've got so many other people saying everything's going to be awesome and it's the greatest thing ever. But you got to look to where those purse strings are coming from. All of those talking heads and all the people who are rah, rah, rah with no actual thought about anything are the ones who invested billions of dollars. They want to see it successful. So how do you advise people who are looking to invest in AI, and what are kind of some of the thoughts that people can kind of think of as they move forward into the AI tech stack? Because there are some great benefits to it.
Oh yeah,
you can. What is that advice you give? Yeah,
I am absolutely not anti-AI. I work for an AI company, so that would be kind of weird for me to say.
Right.
But I'm all for AI being done the right way. And what we have universally across, every industry right now is a push to use AI. And that's okay. But what they are not doing is they're not going, what's the right way to use AI for my organization? What are things that I could do? And when I do kind of advisory services, it's really straightforward. It's like, okay, give me a list of the things that you do as an organization, like your full task list. What are the things that take the most amount of time? And when I say time, I mean the time for somebody, a person to do, that no one likes doing, and has low value, but it's something you have to do. Like, give me that list of things. And that's where we start looking at, this is where we're going to implement AI. If you have to build a report that takes you, 3 days to build that report, we can probably take a week and build an AI agent that will make that report.
Yeah.
And at least for the first few iterations, it's probably going to be an 80% report. It gets you 80% of the way there. But now I've taken 1 week and I've cut in 2 days off of your process. And you still have 1 day where somebody has to do something and manipulate and shape the data appropriately. But now I've done something that has a legitimate return. We've done something that actually affects your business in one way or another. And we can take that use case and then go, okay, now what's next?
Yeah.
And be very deliberate about how you're doing it, instead of what most people are doing is go use AI, have fun, with no direction, no idea of how they want to use it. Yep. And then they are shocked that they're part of the 80% of organizations that have AI projects that fail.
Right.
Well, you didn't determine what success looks like. You didn't start small. We'll take Amazon. When Jeff Bezos started building Amazon in his garage, he did not go, I'm going to build the largest tech company that started as a bookstore ever.
Yeah, that didn't happen. No, it was, we're going to sell books. We're going to make it easy.
He didn't go, I'm going to create essentially the cloud.
Yeah.
No, it was a offshoot of, okay, I have a bookstore. Now I have a very successful bookstore. Now I need compute to manage all this bookstore stuff.
Yep.
oh crap, I built this thing. I can sell this thing to other people who need the same stuff I do.
Yeah.
But it was very iterative. They started with, here's the thing I want to do. Okay, I did that thing successfully. What can I do next? And when you kind of have that appropriate mindset to me, you're able to do a lot of things. And AI is a great way to do that. You know,
It is.
cool.
There's,
If you want to vibe code something,
oh,
then
yeah.
go talk to somebody who's actually a programmer and say,
Say, hey,
okay,
I created this POC. Can we build this actually to scale and do it right?
I'm like, can we do it right? Like,
yeah.
this works, but it works. You know,
Yeah.
I seen in an organization I was advising with, somebody built a really cool reports generation tool in Claude,
Yep.
but it ran on their device on their desktop.
Yep.
Now it was all automated. Great.
Sure.
Until the day that he took off work and the computer wasn't turned on.
I was about to say, until he leaves or a patch update breaks his machine.
And he was off. He was on vacation. Computer was off. Like he was actually doing what you're supposed to do when you're on vacation and not working and having your computer run. And then the report didn't run and people were losing their minds. It's like, this was a case of you did the good thing, but then you didn't take the next step and go, okay, how do I professionalize this?
Yep.
How do I make this to where it is scalable and not dependent on the one smart guy in the room that knows how to do that thing?
Yeah. If anyone's read the Phoenix Project, right? How do you make sure that you don't need a Brent, right? Like you need to make sure that you operationalize the tools that you deploy. So many people, and I've seen this at every company I've ever worked at, they'll buy a new cool tool, they'll rush it, they'll get it out there, they'll start producing data, and then they don't think about the long-term operational costs, like maintaining it, updating it, operationalizing it, and then testing it for failures, right? Like what happens if it goes down? And that's a perfect example. When I took over file services at a company, one of my the entire West Coast went offline, and all of my Macs couldn't get updates or software packages, and I was like, what is going on? And I just taken over the service, and I reach out to the local office and I go, oh yeah, that's under Jenny's desk. Hang on, let me go turn it on. And I was like, wait, hang on. It's under her desk? Yeah, the receptionist, she sometimes kicks the power cord and it takes the data offline and you can no longer do that. And I was like, oh, all right, well, let's fix that, but let's go ahead and get it turned back on and tell Jenny thanks. But
like, and that creates the project to put it in a server rack in a server environment that's got a proper cage, and Jenny can't accidentally take out the power.
I talked to the guy who built it and I was like, bro, he's like, Rob, I was given $20,000 and I was told to build file services for Mac. I did what I could. And I was like, yeah, I mean, sometimes that works, but I think so many times in technology, and this is where I see AI kind of creating a lot more problems than it solves, is it allows you to rapidly create things, but it doesn't allow you to rapidly document that creation, the process, how to support it, or any of those things, unless you're actively feeding it the prompts to say, hey, I want you to create this. I also want you to create documentation to explain XYZ. A lot of people who utilize AI don't understand prompts. They don't know how to be prompt engineers. And it creates a situation where the AI is only as smart as the user using it. It's not going to magically just fix your flaws. Like a great example is a friend of mine deployed this really cool website. He was super excited about it. And I was poking around. I'm like, hey, just so you know, like you didn't secure your API keys. I have full access to your Claude environment. By the way, I can see all the cameras in your house, which apparently you've loaded into Claude. And he's like, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that. I thought the AI would just handle it.
No. You said build me a website. It built you a website.
Yeah. You didn't say secure it, ensure that my API key is not public and that it's not accessible. You didn't tell it to do the things. And that's where I see a lot of the problems with going all in on AI and then removing the human element. Because if you don't have the people who know how to do the things the right way, you're not going to have people able to use the prompts and do the right prompts to be able to create the code in the right way or validate that it's accurate. Like you said, a lot of times doing it the most complicated way, yeah, it works, but it's going to cost you 170 grand in compute for the first year.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we've seen this with, and there's tons of academic papers out there already on it, but there's the existing traveling salesman problem. And for those who don't know, it's you have a traveling salesman. He has to visit a specific number of cities. He has to visit each city, but he can only visit each city only once. And you have to figure out the most cost-effective path for him to visit all these cities.
Yep.
And that sounds like a fairly straightforward problem until you start scaling it and you start adding cities in. And then you have to deal with branching and, and then you throw real world factors in and like, well, yes, these two cities are probably close together. Getting there is not the easy part. You have to factor in modes of transportation. What does he need to do?
What does traffic look like? Weather effects.
I'm like, 1 hour traveling distance in Louisiana is not the same as 1 hour traveling distance in the other LA in California. I'm like, one is, probably 30 to 60 miles here. In Los Angeles, 1 hour could be like 3 miles down the highway. You can factor in all these other pieces, and that's when the problems get very, very complex. And you have all these, reports out there that show that AI still doesn't solve these kinds of problems because of the complexity around it. AI is great for super simple things. If it's something that is very linear and laid out, cool, great. If it's something highly complex, you still need a lot of people involved in that process to even just sanity check things and go, yes, that looks right.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like we're getting to a point that companies are fully like supporting AI, like you said, without any real goals in mind. So success to them, their success criteria is we are using AI.
Yeah.
And that I think is where a lot of these problems stem from, is that you've got people who are really gung-ho about using the new technology. Their bosses and their bosses' bosses are saying more AI, but they're not given any sort of like, this is what we're trying to actually achieve with this. We're trying to save money. We're trying to do XYZ. It's just, we want to see it used more so we can say we're using it more. And that's where I think we're getting a lot of this, Claude deleting an entire code repo and then deleting all its backups because of an authentication issue.
Yeah.
It's like having a junior developer that you give full admin rights that you can't actually fire and you can't hold accountable because it's not a person.
Well, that's one thing that I talk about all the time is that AI is great, but ultimately you are still responsible because AI will not testify in court for you. Nope. And it won't do your jail time and it won't pay your fines.
Yeah. So let's go back to kind of when you first scored your first gig in security. So you got out of the military. How did you end up getting your first like official job within this like cybersecurity realm? How did that even come about? Did you just like meet someone who's like, hey, let's go build some stuff?
So my first grown-up job, and that's how I refer to it as, because I'm a firm believer that every year you spend in the military is just a continuation of either college or high school. But my first, grown-up job, I got because of networking. I had a guy who was my troop when he was in the military. He was what was called an IMA, an individual mobilization augmentee reservist. So he'd come in, for like a couple months or a year on orders and work directly for the active duty side. And he did like 4 years of IMA duty working for me in various different roles. He left IMA, went back to his civilian job. And when I was getting ready to retire, I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I was looking for a job up in the Cleveland area because that's where my wife's from. Was having a hard time finding pretty much anything there that wasn't paying like $50,000 a year for fairly high level roles. And my buddy was like, "Hey, I heard you're retiring." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm retiring." And he's like, "Come work with me." I'm like, "What do you want me to do?" He's like, "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out."
I love that.
And that's kind of how I got my first role. I wound up doing cloud security for, 3-letter spooky agencies and kind of building platforms and running the security around it and doing cool stuff around FedRAMP. But the job conversation was, I want you to come work for me because you were a good boss and I know you know stuff. And I want you to come here and build things because I know that's what you're good at. You can build, you can build things and you can build teams. And I need both of those things. And it was a great, experience for me. It was funny when I went in for my actual formal interview with the guy who'd wind up being my direct boss. And he came in and sat down. He's like, "Well, I don't know why we're doing this interview because I was told we're hiring you no matter what I say. But what do you know?" Like,
I'd like to find out how actively I'm being screwed or being supported. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
And it was a funny conversation. I talked to that guy, a couple of years later when we were at separate jobs, and he's like, "I was really nervous coming into that because I knew I had no say in it." And he's like, "I was so glad that you turned out as well as you did."
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't see that happening anymore. I feel like 10, 15 years ago when we got into this organization and when we got into technology and cyber and started really kind of jumping into those things, it was very much like, let's just collect really smart people and do cool stuff. Now it's all about like, hey, it's great that you're really smart, but like we also want you to be like really personable. And then we need you to also be able to talk in front of people. And we need your communication skills to be really good. And then on top of that, we also want you to be able to lead teams and do the individual contributor work also. Hey, and we're gonna go ahead and pay you $100,000 a year. Also, you can't be full remote. We need you in the office 5 days a week. How's that sound?
That sounds like I'm not taking this job. I'm going someplace else.
But it's wild because that's every job now.
Yeah.
Like there are so few companies that are embracing remote work culture, that are embracing creativity, that are embracing people who may be a little weird. I always joke that most of us who do well in this field are not neurotypical people, right? We're like,
not at all.
You don't go into this career and last any sort of amount of time if you're an average person, because your mind needs to be a little bit crazy and a little bit broken and a lot of bit curious, right? those things are the key for success.
Like I have said it dozens of times in presentations all throughout the country. I'm like, pretty much everyone in cybersecurity is on the spectrum. They could be, just a little weird, or they could be Sheldon Cooper, and they could be something in between.
Yeah.
But everyone's a little somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them really good at doing this. And you have to kind of figure out the right people to put together. And I think that's what makes a good cybersecurity leader. It's figuring out, not hiring, everyone who's exactly the same, because that's absolutely insane. Because you're all going to look at the problem the same way, and then you have a myopic view.
I don't want an echo chamber that's just going to tell me how great I am. I've actually, when I was hiring a leader, I had a guy who interviewed who was awesome, but he was just like me. Like, you'd be great at another company. You won't be great for me because I need somebody to challenge me. I need somebody who's not like me. And it's interesting, right? Because you never know going into the interview how it's going to be. You've interviewed and hired many people. For those listening, what characteristics do you value most as a hiring manager?
So I admire most is that you are trainable and you want to learn. Because I can teach you to do whatever I want you to do, but I can't teach you to want to learn it.
Yeah.
And if you can show me that you have the desire to learn and you have the capacity to learn, because you have to have both, because there are lots of people who want to learn who just aren't good at it.
Yep.
You know, I want to learn piano, but that's not happening. I'm not good at that. So you have to have both desire and capacity. But if you can give me those two things, I can teach you to do whatever I want you to do.
Yeah.
And part of my job as a leader is to find the right people that I can put together. You know, find that person who is the super duper like dog with a bone. Here's a problem. They're going to go dig in and fix it. And then pair that with somebody who is a bit more outgoing and a bit more people oriented and is really good at documentation.
Yes.
And put the peanut butter and jelly together, because they're both good separately, but they're so much better together.
It's amazing how critical in leadership it is to be able to know what your team's strengths and weaknesses are. And a lot of that is understanding their motivations for why they do what they do, right? Like, and understanding what gets them excited. I can't tell you how many teams I've taken over where they've got brilliant engineers doing a monotonous task because they're like, oh, well, he can do it. And I reach out to the guy and I'm like, hey, man, so I'm sure you've already automated this, and I've basically been paying you not to work for the last year, which is totally cool. I'm not looking to blow up your spot. What I'm looking to do is actually utilize your skills. So what do you actually want to do? And I always find that conversation really funny because they're not used to a highly technical leader coming in and going, there's no way this guy hasn't automated this. Like, and you have that candid conversation. They go, well, I've been tinkering with this thing. I'd love to build. This is a problem I see in our organization. I'd love to build that. Awesome. What do you need to build it? I don't know, like $1,200 just for the server for monthly costs. Awesome. Let's do it. And you motivate that guy. You're now getting more work out of them or that girl, and you're getting more work out of them. You're engaging their psyche, and you're giving them a more helpful, hospitable work environment for their mind. You're going to get so much more out of that employee than you would have if you just kept them on that same monotonous task. I always try to give people the ability to grow, and I feel like that doesn't exist. I know for me, I had to fight for it in many of the jobs that I had.
Yeah.
But
and I think
you got to speak for yourself, sometimes.
I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves that we're doing short-term gains for long-term losses, particularly around the use of AI.
Yeah.
And rather than using AI and people in parallel to where you're still getting people to learn how to do the things and you're giving them the advantage of AI, we want AI to do all the, tier 1 level work. And then we want tier 2s to do the reviews and all the other stuff. And that's great this year. And 5 years from now, when I have my tier 2s that I have now, or my, mid-level engineers that go off to some other company and become a senior, where do I get mid-level engineers and, tier 2 analysts from?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I don't, because I AI'd them all out of jobs.
They literally don't exist. And not only that, every manager is only looking for people with experience for 3 to 5 years, even for entry-level roles. And then you have an entire generation of people who are pissed. They were lied to, they were deceived, they were told that there was this job shortage, and now they're coming out of college to the tune of 3,500 to 4,000 a month with cyber degrees, and there are no entry-level jobs. They just don't exist. Like,
or the ones that do exist, you have 1,000 other people applying,
easily.
and you're competing against mid-level engineers who were let go
Yes.
because
Yeah.
of not because of a performance issue, but because the company got acquired, or they
Yep.
replaced some functions with AI, or they're drawing in resources to do an M&A, and they have to make their books look better, so they cut some mid-level resources, so they only have juniors and seniors, and got rid of all the mid-level folks. Like, you've created an environment where it's hyper competitive. And
Yep.
kind of going back to how I got my first, big kid job, the best way to get a job right now in cybersecurity is to know somebody and to
I
actually
would
get
I would say it's
face-to-face referrals.
yeah, I would say it's the only way. I don't see many people getting an opportunity unless you're very specific in a very specific niche that nobody else is doing. Without a referral, I just don't see you getting an opportunity, period. Because like you said, like, when's the last role that you opened? Like, how long ago did you open? Like, what's the last role you hired for?
I hired a security guy, and within 24 hours, I had over 1,000 applicants.
Yep. How did you weed through them?
The people who were referrals first.
And after the referrals, how many people did you interview outside of those?
I interviewed 2 people who were not referrals, and
Yep.
still ended up hiring someone that was a referral because
Yep.
they were a better fit. But to highlight it, if the person had not been a referral, they would have been cut through the process before it got to my desk,
Bingo.
because they didn't have enough of the boxes checked on their resume.
Yep. And that is the very simple reality. Maybe 1 or 2 people who are not referrals will get opportunities. And how were those chosen were they chosen by you? Like, you actually went through the resumes? I do.
Yeah.
I'll give each resume maybe 6 seconds and kind of plow through it to try to find a couple gems, because I know how hard this market is. But I don't know any leaders besides you and I who actually do that.
I will tell you, I go through every resume that comes to a job that
Yep.
I'm hiring for.
Same.
I will also tell you that it is, like the recruiters tell you, about 6 seconds.
Yep.
If you are one of the folks that I narrow down to my top 10%, I'll sit down and really read your resume, and
Same.
I will absolutely go on your LinkedIn, and I will, social media search you
Yep.
to see what you're saying, what you're talking about. Does your LinkedIn match your resume?
If you see no activity on their LinkedIn at all, you see a profile photo that is blurry and a banner that has no writing and absolutely no effort being put into your LinkedIn, will you call that person?
No, I won't. I'm like,
Absolutely not.
if your LinkedIn isn't at least updated, I'm not going to talk to you.
No, because if you can't put your effort into making your digital first impression good, why would I waste time with your in-person or virtual first impression?
Well,
Like,
I look at it from this perspective, and it's really simple. I'm like, all the recruiters will tell you your resume should be 2 pages,
mhm.
and a hiring person is going to spend 6 seconds on it.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn is the opportunity to tell me far more than 2 pages worth of information.
Yep.
And I'm going to look at it for way more than 6 seconds.
Yeah. Make it engaging. Make sure, like, my about section and your about section too, like, we're very candid with who we are, and we're not shying away from our uniqueness or our weirdness. We're embracing it. And I feel like so many people, like, if I have to read one more about section that says like aspiring cybersecurity, no, you're a cybersecurity person. You're not aspiring. If you're living and breathing this stuff, whether you have a job or not, you're a cybersecurity person. Like, the title doesn't make you a cybersecurity person. The title just gets you money. What
Yeah.
makes you a cybersecurity person is your passion and your excitement. And like you said earlier, just, Joshua, is like, if you're not excited and you don't show that passion, how am I going to know that you're somebody that I can train? How do I know? And I think it's, you and I both know, and we both admitted, this field is full of neurotypical or non-neurotypical people who are on the spectrum, who have ADHD. Yet our interview process is still very much like, we need to see your passion, we need to see your excitement, when those type of people are notoriously bad at showing those things. That's why I tell all of my mentees, your soft skills are more important than your technical skills, because in your ability to communicate clearly and effectively is the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. Because will you hire someone who's really, really smart technically but can't communicate it?
Maybe if I have the right team around them. But that's the thing, is I have to have the right. You are not going to be my first hire.
No.
I'm going to have somebody else already hired that can be that human buffer before I hire you.
Yeah.
Because
it's so hard.
The human part's the hard part.
Yeah, it is. And do you give similar advice to kind of these younger kids? Like, you've got a huge following on social media, and I love your stuff. You put out a lot of great stuff and a lot of great content. That's just kind of the no BS way of cyber. And that's why I was like, hey, you want to come hang out and shoot the Fs? Like that to me, you and I just jive immediately, because we're both kind of trying to preach the same message, which is like, there are fundamental problems that no one is addressing. And, you know, we're one of few people going, hey, there's a problem, and we're really going to shoot ourselves in the foot in a few years. Do you give that same advice to kind of young kids? Like, hey, work on your presentation skills, work on your ability to deliver a message.
Yeah. It comes down to one of those things where ultimately how you communicate is what's going to be seen by any hiring manager.
Yeah.
They're not going to see the quality of your work.
Not at all.
Because we don't hire that way. Nor would I want to hire that way, where I have to give you a project that you're going to do unpaid labor for me to see the quality of your work. I'm like, that's just bad for both of us. I'm like, but your ability to communicate what you're doing matters. You know, I can ask the same question to every person. And this is one that I've done when I was interviewing SOC candidates was, you know, what's the difference between an event, an alert, and an incident? And I can tell a lot about an individual based off of the answer they give.
Yeah.
If they're giving me a straight textbook answer that an event is something that happens, an alert is something that's met a special threshold that now is being identified as potentially bad, and an incident is something that is actually bad. Yep. Okay, you understand the academic level of this versus the person who goes, an event is anything that happens in the system. There are hundreds of different events happening all the time. You know, a login is an event. You know, the printer erroring out is an event. An alert is something that we've determined that this type of event is potentially bad. So when we see repeated logins that are failing, one login failing is probably not bad. But when I see 5 logins, that should be an alert, because that's probably something bad. It could be the person just really thinks they know what their password is and keeps trying. Or it could be someone that's trying to do like a password spray or a brute force. Mm-hmm. And then once someone looks at that and calls a user and says, hey, did you forget your password? Are you having problems logging in? No, I'm not logging in at all right now. I'm on my system. I'm doing what I need. Oh, okay. Now this is escalated to, this is potentially an incident, because the evidence I have, that's a totally different answer. They're both correct.
Right. The second
but one tells me more.
The second one is a key indicator of understanding versus just reading about it. Like actually understanding it to a point where you can tell a story. The ability to tell a story and to create a narrative from a question and response that sounds more human and more interactive, like the way that you were explaining things and kind of going through like, hey, here's some examples of what an event is. That shows me that you have a core understanding of the technology. I will argue, and I will argue this till I'm blue in the face. Majority of people who come out of college have no core understanding of technology. They know I've got a cyber cert. I understand that the packet does XYZ, but if I ask them to explain to me why that matters, they are completely incapable of doing so because they only learned enough to pass their tests and then they instantly forgot it because they are not putting it into practice.
Yeah. And to be fair, a lot of university programs are not teaching unified critical thinking.
At all.
And that's what makes or breaks someone in cybersecurity is the ability to truly think critically. It's why I've seen folks, I've hired hundreds of people. My best SOC analyst ever was a guy whose undergraduate degree was in marketing. And I get kind of the weird look like, you hired a marketing major? I'm like, well, let's pump the brakes for a second and go, what are the key tasks for marketing, and compare that to the key task for someone who's doing social engineering.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that Venn diagram is completely on top of each other.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, one's getting you to push the button to buy the thing on your Amazon cart. The other one's getting you to push the button so that they can take over your account. Yep. It's the same skill set.
It is.
I had somebody who was, their major was 18th century French literature. And they went, why did you hire that person? They had 18th century French literature as their undergrad, and they had a security plus. I'm like, one, they could answer the event alert incident question in the best possible way, not just the correct way.
Right.
But for that degree, they had to develop critical thinking because they had to sit there and go, okay, this is what the book said. What was the context around that? Why did the book tell this story? Why is it, we'll talk about, the Count of Monte Cristo. What is it really about? Not just what's on the page, but what's the context around that? What was all the things, and what else did this author talk about and draw in? And that's what they did to write all these papers.
Yeah.
That's what I need a SOC analyst to do. I need them to step back and see what all the full context is, pull all the different pieces and parts in.
Well, and to ask the whys, right? There's so many people who've now gone to AI as their first stop for validation of something. You're removing your ability to learn. You're removing your ability to tinker and fail. Like you said earlier on, your failure 12 times while trying to do that one thing ended up being a huge boon for you later as you tried to attempt other things. You were like, oh, I know that's not going to work. Like, I've already tried that. I've already gone down that path and been punched in the face. I don't need to keep doing it.
Or it's, I went down this path for this thing and I got punched in the face, but in the effort to learn how to get around that thing, I learned these 6 other things.
Yeah.
Because I went to the wrong place 6 times before I found the right thing. And now I'm doing this thing and go, oh, that thing that I read about when I was trying to fix the other thing, that applies to this.
Right.
And I didn't have to go through the getting punched in the face 6 times because I got punched in the face earlier for something completely different.
Yeah. Well, and if you look at kind of the cyber market in general, a lot of companies are not really actually hiring. There are companies that put out jobs, but they're not looking to actually fill them with somebody. They already have someone in mind. They just have to put the job out there.
Yeah.
So when you're going through the process, so let's talk about, if you get a role open today, are you going to instantly post it, or are you instantly going to look through your Rolodex of the 10, 20 friends that you know are currently laid off and see if any of them could do the job?
So for me, I'm going to do, kind of a few things all simultaneously. Yep. I'm going to go through my mental Rolodex of everyone I know who I know is actively looking for a job.
Yep.
So that's check 1. Check 2, I'm going to go everybody I know who I know will be amazing at that job, whether they're looking for a job or not.
Yeah. Can I steal them? For sure.
Like, can I poach you? And for people who don't like the term poach, I can't poach somebody who is not poachable. If they're
Right.
completely happy where they're at, where they have good compensation, they're respected, I can't steal them. So
Yep. Take care of
that's
your
a you
people.
problem.
That is
And
100%.
then my third one is I'm going to go to my peer group and go, do you know anybody who would be great at this role?
Right.
And I'll take those three sources first.
Yep.
And figure out, okay, I have, 5 people who are absolutely going to be great at this. And one of the other things I'm going to look internally. I'm going to look at people who are not necessarily in my department. They're in the cybersecurity, the IT department. I'm going to go talk to HR. Who's got a degree in cybersecurity or IT that doesn't work in IT?
Yeah.
Somebody who's they have a job to have a job, but it's not what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee if I give them an opportunity to actually do what they want to do, they're going to work way harder for me.
Oh, yes. 100%.
And they're able to continue with the same benefits and all the other stuff that they have here. So if they already like it here, they're going to like it even better working in the thing they want to do. So kind of take those 4 different areas, and that's where I'm going to try to draw my talent pool first. Now, if for whatever reason none of those work out, then I'm going to go out and do, the typical hiring thing where I'm going to get 1,000 applications and have to sit down and figure out, all right, what are the things that I really need first? And I try to make it that as easy for me as possible by having a really good job description.
Yeah, same.
This is actually what the job does, not the job description I stole from somebody else. That's the same job title, but not the actual thing.
Not the job that they'll be doing. Yeah, for sure.
I'm a proponent that the job description that I'm hiring for, I should be able to use a year later as your annual review.
Yeah, for sure.
Mike, it should be the exact things that you're doing. And I should have it very clearly put. These are the requirements. Here are the nice to haves.
Yep.
So if I'm putting that you have to have a bachelor's degree, I've already had the conversation of why does that have to be a bachelor's degree?
Yeah.
Like,
how often do you require education? I don't at all, but I also have no education. I got a high school diploma, and that's where I stopped. But how often do you add that as a hard requirement?
Only when the contract requires it. So if I'm doing like a FedGov contract,
you have no choice for Fed stuff.
100%. And to have the job categories based off of what the Department of Labor says, you must have this to be able to pay this much money. Yep. That's when I put that in. Same thing with certifications.
You want a G17 role, you're not getting it. Or a G13, you're not getting it without the degree. I think that's such a good thing to kind of talk about, which a lot of people just don't, is that there are some jobs that require it because contractually they have to, but a lot of hiring managers who are actually looking for diversity, who are looking for unique talent that they can mold, that they can make better, that they can create an environment where they can fail and they can really let people be themselves. They tend to not add that as a requirement because we don't want to limit that.
As a security leader, I'm looking for you to have, at a minimum, a Sec Plus, a GSEC, something along that lines.
Sure. Show me that you care enough that you've done something.
Mike, CompTIA will argue with me. I say Sec Plus is an entry-level certification. They'll tell me that it's a mid-level.
That's a bold statement, Cotton.
I mean, I was Air Force. If we can take, 18 to 22-year-olds every week and send them through a week-long boot camp, give them a week self-study, and have an 80% pass rate, that says to me that is an entry-level certification.
I would agree with that statement. Yeah, for sure.
Because you can't do that with, a CISP.
No, man. That is 10 miles long and about 4 inches deep.
Like, I can't do that with a OCSP.
Nope.
So that's my justification for calling it entry level.
Yep.
I challenge anybody to fight me on that. Let's go. 10 rounds of intellectual argument. But it says that you have at least a demonstrable minimum baseline on what security looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm not particular on which one you have, whether it's the, ICSC squared CC or the Security Plus or the GSEC or
Yep.
insert whatever new one that's out there this week. I just want to see that you've demonstrated that you have a basic level understanding.
Yep.
And that's about all I'm going to ask for, unless you're doing something really niche. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, if I'm going to have you running Palo Alto, having Palo Alto specific certifications probably nudge you a little higher on the list.
Yeah, for sure.
However,
again, if you don't know any of those people and they weren't referrals, the odds are they're still not going to be seen.
Yeah. I'm like, now, if I'm hiring someone that's Palo Alto and I see you have a CCIE, okay, you're not a Palo Alto guy, but I know what a CCIE is, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out in the first 2 to 3 weeks. We're good.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things like, I don't like to put very specific certs, and also I don't like doing that because I also don't like divulging what my tech stack is publicly.
There you go. Yes.
As someone who's done the red side, first thing I do is go look at job.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, so they're using, Entra for their thing. They're using Palo Alto for their firewalls. They have this for this. They're using Splunk for their SIM. I'm like, 100%. Oh, look, I've got your entire tech stack here.
Yep. Now I know exactly how to attack you. I know how to sound like I belong at the company, and I know how to talk if I'm doing a frontal engagement or if I'm doing a virtual engagement. Like, I can't tell you how many times I read these job things and I'm like, wow, that's cool. You've told me everything about your security. That's awesome. I appreciate you. That's going to make my job a lot easier.
Like, thanks for helping.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's like when I got laid off and people were like, my recruiters are like, hey, I can't find you online. And I was like, well, I'm a certified ethical hacker and a professional social engineer. Why would you be able to find me online? And they're like, well, Rob, I'm going to be real with you. I know it's been 20 years that you've been working at a Fortune 100. You will not be able to find a job if people can't find you on LinkedIn or find a social presence for you. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They're like, no, man, it's super critical. And I was like, oh, God, giving up my entire life of anonymity. Now I'm a stupid social media influencer because I hit LinkedIn way too hard. Oh, man.
I'm like, I would never call anybody an influencer because to me that word is cringe.
It is, but it's also relatively true, right? I mean, you don't have 34,000 people that look at your crap and listen to you because you're an idiot. They do it because you're able to influence people. It's the same reason we get sponsors. They believe that we can influence people into buying their product or thinking their product has more merit based on our recommendation. But I agree with you. The term is very cringe, and I am cringe saying it, but it's also the sad reality. Do you have a podcast too? I'm sure you have one, right? It seems we all do.
I mean, I do have a podcast. Been doing it for a couple months now.
Do you have sponsors on your podcast yet, Joshua?
We have a company that actually sponsors all the production on the podcast. We have not evolved to getting individual episode sponsors, but and to be fair, they're a VAR, so they have lots of other things that they sell. They just sell things to other people.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome, and I feel, and this might be kind of an uncomfortable truth. If you don't have a social presence and you are not actively growing your followers and your kind of online presence in technology, you will not survive in this field.
No, you won't, because we are very much a reputational based field.
Yes.
I joke all the time because there's the concept of 6 degrees of separation. I think in IT and very much in cybersecurity, it's closer to 3 degrees of separation.
Agreed.
And I've been asked so many times by my peers who are hiring folks, and they're go, all right, I've narrowed it down to these 5 people. Do you know any of them? And what are your thoughts and opinions of them?
Yeah.
And that's something I get asked probably a couple times a month.
Yep. Happens to me too. And when people get a role, what's the first thing they do? Do you know someone?
Yeah.
Because our recommendation, you and I will not recommend someone that we would not hire ourselves. And
Yeah.
that bar, I think, is really high, right? We really look for top tier talent, and we only recommend top tier talent.
And that's the thing is, I have recommended people where I go, this is who you want to hire, not
Yep.
because they'll be amazing right now.
They'll be great in 6 months if you put time into them. You put 90 days into this person, and they will crush it more than anyone else you hired. 100%.
And that's where I'm very clear in my recommendations. Like, this is the person that if you want someone who you can hire and fire and forget, this is the person you're going to hire. They're going to cost you 20% more.
Yeah.
You can hire this person, invest 90 days in making sure that they get their feet underneath them, give them the right training, and they're going to outdo every one of your other employees.
Yep.
And they'll actually be cheaper than the guy over here.
And you're
but it depends on what do you need right now.
And also, how much of an investment are you willing to make into that talent? Right. And I think that's a huge thing is a lot of leaders nowadays want that fire and forget. And when we say fire and forget, for those listening, that's a term that basically means we want them to be able to go off on their own. We give them an objective and we know it'll get done and we can just walk away. That's the goal. Like, you want your employees to feel enabled. You want them to feel like they can kind of go and conquer whatever you give them. And you don't want them to feel like you're hovering over them the entire time. One, I don't have time to do that at our level. And two, I want them to feel like they have the ability to do it on their own, because that's how you get really competent employees who really like to do cool stuff. Right? It's so critical. And I see a lot of people just kind of missing the mark there. I know we've been talking forever, and honestly, I feel like we could just shoot the shit forever, like in reality. Let's plug some of your stuff. Let's talk about let's plug your book, your social media stuff. Make sure all that gets the proper plugs, and then we'll wrap it up. So
So I do have a book, Unpopular Opinion, Burning Down the Bullshit in Cybersecurity. It's available on Amazon. Talking about a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last, hour or so.
Yeah.
Just all the things that are wrong in cybersecurity that, we can fix and we should be fixing. I'll have another book coming out later this year, Empathetic Hacker, Hacking in Cybersecurity Leadership, talking about how to fix the issue that we have with the human element, addressing things like burnout and how do we make sure that our processes are in place, that we're taking care of the human side, because that breaks more than the tech side.
Yep.
I do have a podcast, Criticality Live, every Wednesday. I'd love to have you come on as a guest as well.
Happy to come hang out, man. I would love it.
And then I'm all over. I'm actually heading out to speak at B-Sides in New Orleans in a few weeks. If you're down there, I'm the keynote in the morning, so happy come see me and shake hands. Speak all over elsewhere, so good times.
When you got into this, were you somebody who's like, you know what? I love public speaking. Or were you a person that's like me, an introvert who's like, I need to learn to speak better. I need to speak more eloquently. I need to learn to use my tool, which is my voice, in a more effective manner. And then it just turned into, now I'm starting to talk more. Okay, apparently I'm good at this, and now I'm doing it more often.
So I will tell you, I am an extreme introvert.
Yep.
Massive level of introvert. But I was kind of forced to do public speaking because I was in the military, and you don't have an option. Like,
right.
You go to training programs, and when I went to Airman Leadership School, I had to do a 5-minute speech, and that was the most terrifying 5 minutes of my entire life. Now you can put me on stage and I'll ramble for like an hour and not even think about it.
Yep, same.
But I'll tell you very clearly, before I go on stage, every single time, I'm absolutely terrified.
I can't get past it either. And I wouldn't say it's a nervousness. It's just like this inherent, like, I know I'm going to be fine. I've done it a bunch. But there's that moment right beforehand where you're just like, I'm going to fail. I'm going to somehow dork this up. I'm going to like, somehow I'm going to make an ass of myself.
Mine is absolutely imposter syndrome. I keep
Yeah.
going, why the hell would anybody listen to the
How do
kid
I-
from the trailer park?
Yes.
And they're like, and then I'll have people like, Josh, you're a professor at Tulane University. You've been doing this for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
You're currently working on your doctorate in this. You're okay. I'm like, no, I'm still the 18-year-old kid in the trailer park.
We don't lose that poor kid mentality, man. I'm still the exact same as a Fortune 500 executive. I still think like a poor kid. Like, I will pull stuff out of the trash. I'm like, oh, that's a real nice table. You know, and a little bit of spit and polish, I can get that bad boy up and running in no time. That's going to look real nice. My wife is like, we could just buy a new table. I was like, but there's a table right there. Like,
But that's a nice table.
What? Look at the wood. That's mahogany. Mahogany's not cheap, lady.
Hey, I'm sure that's a good cardboard box. I'm keeping that box.
Yeah. Oh my God. So there was like a part of my life early on where I was homeless and kind of living on the streets because I moved out when I was 18 and I was just like, I can't live in this chaos environment anymore. And I still look back fondly at that time because it humbles you. And it puts you in a mindset where you will never go back to being broke because you know what that feels like and you know what it feels like to go hungry and you know what it feels like to kind of like eat government cheese and like
Hey, don't besmirch government cheese.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, I still love that plasticky terrible cheese. My palate has definitely grown accustomed to those. I will still eat the hell out of some ramen noodles.
Like, don't be knocking my struggle meals, all right?
No. But did you ever eat ramen like without even cooking it, where you just you put the packet on and just kind of bit into it?
Yeah. As a kid, that was you go out playing, you put a pack of ramen in your back pocket, and you just sprinkle the powder on and
man,
eat the noodles, and no water required.
That is such a the only people who truly get that are truly poor kids where you're like you couldn't afford Doritos, so like you had what I call ghetto chips, which is the ramen noodles in your back pocket that got crushed from playing. Oh Christ, that I'm gonna go eat one of those.
My wife still gives me a bunch of crap because I still like the absolute generic mac and cheese, like with the orange powder.
Dude, it's the best.
I'll throw that down. She's like, but the Velveeta shells and cheese. I'm like, that's good too, but it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah, you fancy kids and your Velveeta shells. Like, that's how you knew like your buddies were balling when you went to their house and they're like, hey, you guys, you want some mac and cheese? I'm like, oh yeah, oh that'd be great. I'd love that. And they're like, oh, we're gonna make Velveeta shells. Is that okay? I'm like, oh damn, you guys got the big bucks. Yeah, that's amazing.
You got that rare air up there.
Oh man, dude, I appreciate you, brother. I love what you're doing. I love how you're helping people. And everyone else, hopefully you took something from this. I'm not even sure what we talked about, but I'm sure it was entertaining. And anyone else listening, good luck out there.